Hello and welcome back to The Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good, sir. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Looking forward to talking about Re-Animator from 1985. When did you first see Re-Animator?
So I think I saw it at the same time as I saw two.
Okay,
When
which
two came out.
surprisingly good sequel, actually.
Yeah, I love the second.
Yeah, me too. It's
Third,
leans
third one-
heavier into the comedy, but I think it works better.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's good.
yeah. Third one. Oof.
No.
There's still a sort of slight thing that they might eventually do that one that they had planned for him being in the White House and bringing the president back. Have you heard about that?
No.
It was the original script, I think, for the second one.
Oh,
That
really?
he was supposed to be like Dan was supposed to be taken to the White House for some reason to do something,
Right.
and he's there. He finds West bringing back the president,
Okay.
and it never that particular script never came about.
I'm glad that never happened. I
I
think.
think it sounds brilliant. I think
I
it sounds so fucking batshit that it's,
Yeah. True.
and I think they tried a number of times to get that script up and running, but it never came to anything.
Sure.
I mean, they could still do it, but you know, he's still pretty spry for his age, and he looks white, and Bruce Abbott's still around, so
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they were going to do obviously, this was intended as a TV show originally, but they were going to do a TV show, I think, in the 2000s sometime. They were threatening to do a TV show, which obviously wouldn't have starred any of the original cast.
No, that was going to be a complete reboot, wasn't it?
Um,
And I think you still hear rumblings of.
Sure. I'm surprised, like, Shudder or someone hasn't just gone, yeah, we'll do it, you know?
Yeah.
I guess, depends on the rights and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure I saw this one on a rental.
Yeah.
I think I saw this one a long time before I saw the second one, though. Like, I didn't see the second one immediately. It was quite a few years later that I saw the second one.
I didn't see. I didn't like I said. I didn't see the second one in the cinema or anything.
No.
But I did get it out as soon as it came out on video. Me and a couple of friends were like, "Wait, we got to get the first one as well, so that we can know what we're watching." We watched it on like a double bill.
Can't beat a good old double bill back in the day. But yeah. So well, let's just get into it, I guess.
Yeah.
It's an interesting film. This one, it's it's a parody of a parody, which is kind of odd.
Yeah.
Obviously, based. It's a parody of Lovecraft's Re-Animator, which is kind of a parody of Frankenstein. So it's kind of like parodyception going on. It's a bit weird.
When Stuart Gordon wanted to do a horror movie, because he was in charge of a theatre troupe.
Yeah.
And him and his wife ran this theatre troupe in Chicago, and they had all these great actors, and they thought, well, maybe we should do a movie, and then they thought, maybe we'll do a TV show. So they were discussing sort of horror movies, and there was someone said, do a horror movie because it's cheap, and you can get them out pretty easy.
Yeah.
They thought, right, okay, horror movie then. So I think first they were sort of thinking maybe some sort of a vampire movie, and somebody said, oh, vampire movies, there's a bit too many of them.
Sure.
And it's like, why don't we do like Frankenstein? And it's like, well, there is quite a lot of Frankenstein movies, but I do love, that he loved, Hammer movies.
Yeah, it does feel very Hammer.
Yeah,
very Hammer.
Yeah, it really does. And he's basically, someone said, well, have you read Herbert West Re-Animator? And he was like, no, I've never heard of it. And he's like, well, read that. And at the time, it was out of print.
Right.
So he basically went to the library and found a copy and read it and was like, yes, this needs to be done. So that's like you said, they were going to do it it's like a TV show. And it was going to be, at the time, deadly serious.
Yeah, which I think would have ruined this film.
Yeah.
Like, if they tried to do this film but serious, I just think it just would not have worked at all. This works so much better as a parody.
Yeah. And I think, I think he's going to be in black and white, and and then somebody, I think the people said, oh no, that we don't do half an hour TV shows anymore, and he was like, okay, we got a bit disheartened. And then Brian Yuzna came along, with working for Charles Bannon, I think he was at the time, He said, why don't you come to LA and we'll do it as a movie?
Mm.
So that's what he did.
Yeah, and here we are.
Mm.
So we begin at the this medical school in Zurich, in Switzerland. There's been a disturbance in one of the labs, so the dean's been called. And he kind of gets there. There's like police there already, and there's this big commotion from inside. One of the I assume one of the teachers there is screaming after the doctor.
It's Professor Gruber.
Yes,
his name is Professor Hans Gruber.
Oh yes, sorry, you're right. Yes, it is. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, I didn't pick up on that. You're absolutely right. So the police kind of reasonably sensibly open the door, and they're reasonably cautious about entering, which I like. Good to see. But they enter, and after hearing Gruber screaming in agony, and they open the door to see Gruber on the floor with screaming with Herbert West on top of him, basically. And
I love the way that he drops the syringe.
Yes,
it just sort of slides down his hand, down his arm. He's like, "Oops," like I didn't do anything, sort of thing, on his expression on his face.
So the assumption is that he's basically I think the assumption is that he's killed him at this point, because the police grab him, and then of course Gruber then sort of gets up screaming, and his eyes are bulging, and eventually they explode. And he starts spewing blood. It really sets the scene of exactly what you're going to get from this movie right off the bat.
It's a great practical effect as well. That
the whole film is full of
some bladders and air, people blowing into them.
Yeah,
and lots of goo coming out. It's like perfect.
But it really works. And of course, after spewing blood and having exploding eyes, Gruber falls dead on the floor. And the dean's kind of like, did you kill Dr. Gruber? And West is like, no.
She's with the Swiss doctor woman. She says, "You killed him," and he says, "No, I didn't kill him.
I gave him life."
Gave him life, and not very good life, was it? It's a bit of a shocker, really.
Yeah.
That whole scene, was filmed later.
Right,
it was filmed at the end. They went away and they came back because initially he wanted to do that. They wanted to do that scene, and then somebody said, "No, let's cut it out. We don't need it. So let's get out."
And then test audiences change their mind.
Yeah, Yuzna says, "Actually, I think we need to set up the tone of the movie to get people in right away."
And it does. It does
exactly that. And he says, there's no mistaking what this movie is after that. First scene.
No, you know what's going on.
And as Gordon said, it was the best idea we did. We just it worked so well.
It's tremendous. They never really explain how he gets out of this situation.
No.
He just kind of does. Because he looks guilty as shit.
My guess is they couldn't prove that
they couldn't. Yeah.
Deported him or something, probably.
Yes. Well, either way, he flees to New England. And he heads to the Miskatonic University.
Yeah.
To further his studies.
Get that amazing credit scene.
Oh yeah, the music is so
it's Bernard Herrmann, isn't it? They've just ripped off Bernard Herrmann.
Yeah. I mean, it feels very 50s in its style, which is interesting because you'd think they'd go with like a more Frankenstein-y 20s thing, but maybe it is the Hammer horror influence. They were like, early Hammer.
Who's that? I'm trying to remember the name of the bloody guy who wrote it now, but he said that he basically chose to do that. He saw the film and thought, well, this is clearly like a tongue-in-cheek thing.
Yeah.
So why don't I just do
the Blob,
like the Psycho music and change it a bit? You think, wow, that's ballsy.
It feels very blobby as well, which kind of works.
Yeah. It does. Feel
although actually the music fits a lot better here than it does in the Blob, which is bizarre music for the film they made.
Not the creeps and crawls thing.
Yeah. But yeah, the artwork and everything is just
the
tremendous.
I love the colors and the sort of Grey's Anatomy sort of drawings, isn't it? It's anatomy of the head and eyes and all sorts of things. Just it's weirdly beautiful, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So we're introduced to Dan as well. He's a medical student, and he briefly meets Herbert West.
Now we get the thing first where he's trying to bring someone back to life, isn't he? He's trying to resuscitate the lady.
I don't remember that.
Oh, okay. So
fine. I mean, I just don't remember that, but yeah, okay.
He the first thing we see of him is he's doing compressions on a rather large naked lady, and she doesn't make it, and there's a doctor who is played by Gordon's wife, Carolyn Purdy Gordon, and she says you've got to learn when to stop.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes, you're right. That is I got that scene out of order, I think.
Yeah, she says you've got to learn when to stop it and be professional.
Yes, and then that's kind of
take her to the morgue.
Yes, take her to the morgue immediately.
Yeah.
And that's kind of his thing. Is much like Hammer's Frankenstein, particularly. It's that like I know better than everyone. My way is the correct way. Because he will very shortly fall out with the faculty, Carl. He falls out with Dr. Carl Hill, and he's like, your theory is rubbish. The brain death theory is the 6 minutes or something. The
6 to 12 minutes.
Yeah, 6 to 12, and he's like, it's much longer than that. And you stole your theory from Dr. Gruber. And all of this, but yeah, sorry, you're right. Yes, that scene did come first. And
that's also you first meet the security guard.
I love him so much.
Who's clearly going for a wank every 5 minutes.
I just love it. At the end, I love him so much when the headless corpse comes out the door and he's just like, what the fuck? And then he just leaves. Like later on, the head comes flying out and he's like, oh, I'm off. Bye.
Yeah, he's totally, fuck this shit, I'm gone.
I'm not paid enough. But yes, you can assume what he's going away and doing every 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. It's clear what he's doing.
Yes.
He gleefully smiles every time as well.
Yeah, he's very happy about it.
I go for a coffee.
Yes, yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, so he meets Dan initially, and he's just like very dismissive of Dan almost immediately when he sees him this first time.
He doesn't shake his hand, or isn't really paying attention to him. He's just watching Dr. Hill.
Yeah.
Lobotomize a corpse, basically.
Yeah. He pays him absolutely no attention whatsoever. But later, he does as he goes to rent. He's looking for a place to rent, so he turns up as we see Dan, with his girlfriend, who has the worst time in this film. She's lovely and does nothing wrong, and is just treated like shit from beginning to end.
Yeah. And I think it's the Dan character.
Yeah.
You so much want to punch him.
Oh god, yeah. He probably infuriates me more than anyone. Yeah.
But what he's doing, he's sort of, for a start, Bruce Abbott plays so well.
He does.
He's so believable as this sort of kind of everyman. I mean, he's a doctor, but he's kind of the everyman who just gets caught up in this because he has the curiosity. Yes. But he doesn't have, obviously, the same skills. And he sort of wants to do the right thing. But the idea of bringing people back is too much for him. And he desperately wants to help as well.
Yeah.
And you get the whole sort of make a decision one way or the other, dude.
Yeah.
Just
But it's kind of complicated for Dan and Barbara, who, he's having this somewhat secretive love affair with. Because she's the daughter of the school's dean, Dr. Hasley. So they're kind of having this Well, I don't know if it's really secret because I think like it's
No,
made clear that
but-
he knows, but he's like, you're not doing anything with her.
Yeah.
You know, basically until you like. I think they're like, well, you have to basically get through school before.
You have to be doctors before you can do anything.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have no idea how old she's supposed to be.
No, it's the American thing, though, isn't it? You know.
I mean, I don't think they're. I think they're in the 20s, the actors.
Yeah.
But she's what? I don't know how old. How long do they stay in school? It's 18, isn't it? In America.
Yeah.
And she must be in her first. They're in their first year, so she must only be about 19, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
But she's certainly.
But it's the first year of medical school, right? So
yeah,
you know, we're past high school, presumably. Yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure how old. But anyway, they're
clearly controlled by her father anyway.
Yes, she is, and he's like, you know, she's like, oh, you know, he's like the last of a dying breed, he's the last of his kind, but you know, he's very traditional in this way, and you know, just gotta live with that. And she gets dressed because she has to leave, obviously, because I think she's on like a curfew, right? Mm-hmm. And he starts like messing around, pretending to be a corpse. He kind of comes up with the sheets to scare her and stuff. And then there is
ad-libbed as well. All that.
Really? It's really good. I actually really buy their little relationship.
Yeah.
In that moment, I think it works really well.
One of the cool things for the whole crew is that they because of the way Gordon was working, because he was a theatre guy, they actually got like a couple of weeks rehearsal before they even started filming.
Right.
So they all sort of knew each other. By the time they started filming, they'd all got to know each other. They'd all were comfortable with how they worked. So they could do that sort of improv and sort of get away with it.
Yeah.
Because they all knew what they were capable of and what they were doing, and it's really good, that scene. I think I really like it.
Yeah. But yeah. So anyway, he kind of like chases her out into the hallway, and then there's a knock at the door, and
she opens the door to leave.
Oh, sorry. Yes, she goes to leave. She opens the door to leave.
Yeah,
and he stood there.
Best.
Yeah. And of course, Dan is kind of horrified, and he takes the sheets off, but obviously he's completely naked. So then he takes the sheet off, which was covering him completely. Now he's completely naked. So he's like, "Give me a minute. Oh, you're here about the room. Give me a second," and kind of runs away. And she's just kind of awkwardly stuck with Herbert. And she's like, this is really awkward.
Zero interest in her as well. That's one of the things I love about this movie. He's just completely. He doesn't care that she's actually a doctor student as well.
He doesn't really care about anyone because he doesn't care about Dan either. Unless Dan can provide something, much like Dr. Frankenstein in Hammer Horror.
And who is it? Is it not Hans? Is it Hans? No, I can't remember who the assistant is in Horror Dracula.
I've watched way too many of the Hammer Frankenstein movies. Yeah. I cannot remember which one.
It's a very similar relationship.
It is. Yeah.
He's the guy that has a bit more humanity about him, and West is basically Frankenstein, who's just it's all about the work.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, so he's like, oh, you're here about the room, and he's like, oh, we met earlier, right? And then he's kind of a bit more open, like Herbert's a little more friendly with him, purely because he realizes he wants something, especially when he asks, "Have you got a basement?" You know, just curious. And of course, as soon as he says yes, Herbert is down there immediate,
like a whippet.
Yeah. And he's looking around and he's like, "Oh, this is perfect," and it's a total shithole down there.
It's like that.
It's just full of crap.
Sanitary. That place is going to be great for a lab.
Yeah. And he's like, "This is perfect." The whole time, Barbara is just kind of as politely as she can, strongly protesting. She's giving him the evils.
Daggers. Yep. She's like, no.
She's like, "I've got to go now, but you probably need to have a long conversation before you agree whether he's going to move in." And the whole time, like you said, she's shaking her head the whole
notes.
time. Yeah.
He's like, oh, it's perfect. I'll move right in, shall I? And he pulls up a bunch of notes, and she's fucking looking at him, shaking her head, like, no.
Well, she says, you'll probably want to discuss this before moving in, before you come to a decision. And then she's saying that to Dan, but Herbert's like, no, I've made my decision. I'm moving in. Just gives him the cash. She's like, oh. And of course, Dan needs money. He's a student, so he's like, yeah, okay, deal, done.
Well, I think we established that he's working class, isn't he? He's on a grant.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will learn very shortly because he loses that grant.
Yes,
or is threatened to anyway.
Oh, he definitely loses it. Well, theoretically,
it depends how quickly that paperwork was signed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But yes, so he agrees to allow Herbert to move in, and it's like Herbert's paying for a room, but now he's also paying. He just gets the lab for free, I guess. Unless he's moving into the basement and just living in the lab, but he seems to have his separate room later, right?
Yeah, because that's where he's got the fridge.
Yes, yeah,
in his room with which you see well, we'll get there, but it's like you've got a fridge in your room, but you just leave the door open.
The door of the fridge open, yeah. Just it was needed for the scene.
Yeah.
Yes, but anyway, I presume the next day, we see Dr. Carl Hill giving his kind of speech and showing how to retrieve the brain from a cadaver. And he kind of goes through removing the scalp, and then cutting out the part of the skull, and then grabbing the brain. And I
love that you do make this incision, and then you just peel this, rather like peeling a large orange.
And everyone's laughing except for Herbert, who just is looking furious the whole time. Herbert thinks he knows better than Dr. Hill.
Theoretically, he does.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, that's the thing. Like, in this film, he is right.
Yeah.
So he does know better. Which is kind of the thing, because with some of the Frankenstein adaptions, I think in some of the Hammer ones they've done it. Certainly in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein they do it, where it's like it's not that the other doctor doesn't know as much, is that they know it's too dangerous and probably shouldn't be done. It's like, no, you're fucking with things you shouldn't fuck with.
Yeah, whereas it's the whole God thing. This doesn't go for the whole God thing.
Yeah.
This goes for the fact that he's actually a bad doctor, and he's plagiarized all of his research.
Yeah, he's basically he's made his name off of Dr. Gruber. And the thing is, like, Herbert points that out here, because he does the thing with the pencils where he's snapping the pencils.
I love that. That is such a great thing, because he basically, the Hill says about the 12 minutes, and he purposely says it because he knows
he repeats it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he knows
6 to 12 minutes.
West is gonna, object.
Yeah,
and West just puts that pencil up in front of him and then snaps it, and it's like, I love the sheer ballsy fucking arrogance.
He doesn't even blink.
No.
Like, he's just staring at him the whole time he does it as well. And then he gets another one and does it again.
Keeps going, he keeps going with the lecture, and he puts the other pencil up. And he says to him, if my suggestion to you, Mr. West, is get a pen. Yeah.
And then he's like, we'll cover we'll cover this later. Class dismissed. But then, like, West doesn't wait for the class to leave. He immediately starts this tirade of, like, how dare you teach this to these kids? How dare you teach this nonsense to these kids? Everything you know, you stole from my mentor, Dr. Gruber.
Yeah, and he says, you're closing their minds before they've even made a decision. You're telling them stuff that they're not learning anything. He's saying they're basically, you're closing them off.
That's right. Yeah, he says, like, you're closing their minds before they've even started, and and Dr. Hill is like, Mr. West, it will be a pleasure to fail you.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to fail you. But yes, so we then see the good doctor, Dr. Hill, is actually quite close with the school's dean, Dr. Hesley, who, as we've said, is Barbara's father. So they're having a meal and kind of, just discussing doctor things. And she...
Yeah, he mentioned something when they're in the morgue. He says to him something about some sort of grants.
That's right, yeah.
He's the grant machine.
Yes, yeah. And they're having some wine, and they offer Barbara a wine. Or Dr. Hasley says, "Hey, would you like a glass of wine?" Oh no, actually no, it's not. It is Dr. Hill that says you should have some wine.
Yeah.
Because we'll get to that later.
I mean, he's clearly.
Yeah, he's a bit. Yeah. It's weird. The first time I watched this, I actually felt like that was kind of tacked on at the end. Where Dr. Hill is like obsessed with her and stuff, but when you rewatch it, it's like no, there was enough there. You could see it. For some reason, the first time I saw it, I didn't really see that. But yeah, subsequent watches, I'm like, okay, yeah,
It's later on when they find something in his office.
Oh yeah, well that's what I mean. When that moment happened, I was like, oh, that seems a bit sudden, but there are hints throughout that actually he is kind of obsessed with her anyway. Before we get to that point,
this is, and also this scene is the first, I think, the scene where you get a remnant of a side plot that was taken out.
Oh really?
But I think there's enough residue in this whole thing that explains a lot. So, Mr. Plagiarizer, he has mind control powers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he was...
That explains the end, actually, kind of a bit better.
Yeah, so there's a whole subplot that was removed where he can hypnotize people. And he hypnotizes the dean, which is why the dean basically fires.
Right.
And also, there's a couple of bits where you can see the remnants of it. So there's the bit where Herbert is confronted in his we're going to get to it, but when he's confronting Herbert in Herbert's lab, and he says, Herbert's like not going to do anything, and he says to him, you will give it to me, and Herbert like walks backwards. You can, there's that, and also when he's talking to Megan later, before that, when she's got her father's in the cell behind her, and he's walking towards her, and he's talking to her, and she's sort of walking back, and then the dad bangs on the window, and it breaks his concentration. So there are sort of these little hints, and of course that then leads to at the end where he's literally, doing what we will discuss later. But yeah, so that was cut. That whole section was cut, but there's enough.
Now that you've said it, that I can see where that fits. Actually,
yeah, there's enough sort of residue of that storyline to make it. I think almost obvious that he's got powers.
Well, certainly by the end, when he's kind of miraculously controlling all the cadavers magically.
Yeah, that's what
kind of like.
Yeah,
it was always weird, but I just kind of always went with it. But now you've said that, it makes a lot more sense actually. That would be the case.
So they're having this meal, and she says that she can't drink. She's not going to drink anything because she's got a study date.
Quote study.
Yeah.
Study date with Dan, and obviously Dr. Hesley's like, oh, okay, him again,
And he basically says to the dean, he's moved in because the doorbell rings, and she goes off, and he says, are you sure you want her with, Dan? I heard, that West boy's moved into his house.
Yeah.
It's not really good for her,
He's right.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not good for her either, but,
Yeah.
He is right.
I watched the, oh my God, what
commentary?
Yes, thank you. Good God. I watched the commentary, and Barbara Crampton at one point says, this whole movie would have saved herself and Dan if she would have just disobeyed her father and moved in with him.
Yeah, that's probably true, because then they never would have had Herbert as a...
Yeah, they would have never...
As a house guest mate.
They at least would have been fine.
Yeah, everyone else probably would have been screwed. But...
Yeah, probably not so much.
Yeah. but yeah, so she heads over to see Dan, and they're I guess half studying, half flirting, more flirting than studying.
She's clearly uncomfortable. He's trying to flirt.
Oh, he's trying desperately to flirt
With his incredibly red jumper.
Mm-hmm. And she's like, "Where's Rufus? I haven't heard him." Like, and of course at first she's complaining about West. She's like, "That Dr. West, he's always she like her first complaint is like he's always in his room and being really quiet." And it's like that's not really a reason to get angry about someone.
I mean, I was going to say,
as far as excuses go, that's a really bad one.
Surely you want them to be like that.
Yeah, I'd be like, "Thank God he's really quiet." You know, but that's her opening complaint. But then she was,
does he even eat? It's
does he even eat?
He's a bloke. He doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't notice shit like that.
Yeah. And also he's a student. He's probably getting pizza delivered or whatever. He's not using. And also he's got a fridge in his room. So how would you know?
That's true.
He could conceivably be eating just in his room, like not bothering anyone. Of course, I suppose that's assuming they knew he had a fridge. He could have brought the fridge with him.
Yeah.
Anyway, thinking too much about this food setup. So anyway, she's like, "Where's Rufus the cat?" Because she's like, "He's always here," and Dan's like, "Well, maybe he's just out or something," and she's like, "No, because normally he's always knocking something over while I'm here or doing something. I haven't even heard him. Like, where is he?" So she goes out and starts doing the cat pss, pss, pss noise, which I've never understood why people do that to cats. It's a bit weird. Although, as I said that, Toadie actually jumped up on the bed. That was weird. Okay, maybe it works.
I was going to say, you know it doesn't work most of the time, but you still do it.
Yeah, well, apparently it works immediately.
It must be some sort of innate inbuilt human response to cats. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so they start going out looking for Rufus, and while they're looking around, Barbara just thinks, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna go in his room." She obviously suspects immediately. She's like, "He's a dodgy guy. Haven't heard from my cat in a little while. I'm going to assume." Obviously, Herbert is out, so and
Herbert clearly is an idiot here because he did it on purpose. His door is actually open, and so is the fridge door.
Yeah, it's almost like he was antagonizing her. Yeah.
So my guess is that he actually did it on purpose.
Yeah, either he did it on purpose or he was like rushing, or I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird setup. I think it, to be honest, was probably mostly done just for the sake of the scene making sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of comes across like it's like he's done it on purpose and like psychopathic kind of behavior.
Well, he's certainly a fucking psycho.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, she opens the room and obviously she sees poor Rufus dead in the fridge, with some ominous green liquid underneath in a vial, but that's not mentioned. She starts screaming, obviously, and Dan comes in. He's like, what is it? And obviously sees himself. And then Herbert turns up, completely unfazed, pretty much. He comes in complaining.
That they're in his room.
Yeah, he just comes in complaining that they're in his room. He's like, "How dare you come into my room?" Yeah. She's like, "You killed my cat." And Dan's understandably upset as well. He's like, "What on earth? Like, forget us being in your room. You've killed our cat. He's dead in the fridge." And of course,
he says he was dead when I found him.
Yeah, he was like,
they all sort of look incredulously at him, and he sort of purses his lips like a sort of sulk, and he goes, "Well, he suffocated. He got into the trash, and his head got stuck in a jar, and he suffocated." And they sort of all look at him, and it's like, well, I guess it's plausible.
Well, the thing is, I think when he says it, it sounds like bullshit, but he keeps talking until it kind of works. He kind of says it, and I think he almost says it as an automatic, like, "Oh God, I was going to tell you, I did it to help you.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, and then he was like, oh yeah, well it's suffocated because he got his head stuck in a bottle, and then
He says I didn't want the place to stink up, so I stuck it in the
and
fridge.
I know how much it means to you as well. He's like, I know how much Rufus meant to you, and so I was going to tell you later. I didn't want to. What does he say? He was like, I didn't want to just like come in and tell you, oh, he's dead or whatever. You know, I was going to wait until later.
My favourite bit is he said, well, why didn't you leave a note or something? He says leave a note. He says, what would that note have said? Cat dead, details later.
yeah. And he says I've been pushing corpses around all day, as you well know. I haven't had time to come and talk to you. But yeah, so somehow he gets away with this.
Yeah, just about.
Obviously, Barbara hates him, but Barbara hated him anyway. He doesn't get kicked out of the house, and he manages to stay.
And that's a real dead cat, that is as well.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah. The thing later, the prop.
Oh
later,
yeah, of course, yeah.
But that is
right. So sometime later, Dan is on his own. Obviously, Barbara's gone. And
sleeping, isn't he?
Yeah. But he hears an awful noise. And he kind of starts investigating the source of the noise. He knocks on West's door and he's like, "Can you hear that, West?"
Yeah.
Like, and no answer, obviously. And he realizes the commotion is coming from the basement. So he opens the door. West is not good at locking doors.
Again, I'm not even sure if he sort of.
I think he wanted him to see it this stage.
Yeah. This whole setup is so that he can get Dan on his side, isn't it?
Because the thing is, like, he had to show him that the cat was dead in the first place to now show him the cat's alive.
Yeah.
So it all feels kind of pre-planned, although I'm guessing he didn't plan for the cat to be assaulting him.
No.
That's probably not part of the plan.
And Dan, sensibly, he does get a bat, at least.
Yeah.
He arms himself, which is more than a lot of these people do in these movies.
That's true. He does at least have that much sense. So he comes down to discover Rufus basically attacking Herbert.
On Herbert's back.
On Herbert's back, yeah. And Dan obviously kind of rescues him, I guess you could say. And together they re-kill the cat.
I love this scene because one, the lighting is amazing.
It's great. I think the lighting throughout
is fucking great.
Yeah, I was going to say I think the lighting throughout this is great.
There's a bit later on the cast thingy that Barbara Crampton. There's a bit where that Barbara Crampton, the infamous scene comes up, and I think it's Brian Yuzna says, "Wow, look at that lighting," and Barbara Crampton goes, "Wow, look at my tits." But the lighting is amazing in this scene. And it's, you've got that single light swinging.
Yeah.
In the thing. And they just look like they're just bashing the shit out of the walls.
Yeah, pretty much. But yes, so Rufus is once again dead, and they have this discussion, really, where he's like, just get the fuck out. And Herbert's like, I brought your cat back to life, and he's like, no, you didn't. You killed him. And he's like, you just literally saw he was alive. Like, you cannot deny what your eyes have seen.
Have stunned him. He must have been asleep in the fridge. Doesn't
he say that you drugged him to bring his heart level down and his heart rate right down to like simulate death? And then now you've woken him up and you're claiming that you brought him back to life. But then Herbert's like this bloody mangled corpse of this cat, and he's like, well, do you agree he's dead now?
Yeah,
can we agree on that?
It's a thug.
So of course he injects him with the predator blood, and and
that's the first time that stuff was ever filmed appeared in a film.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
And
because I assumed it was the same stuff, because
it's just from glow sticks.
Yeah.
And they said you really don't want to get it on your skin.
Oh God, no.
Really good to touch. And they are like chucking it around. And
I have always had. I think it's like, I guess movies and pop culture throughout my childhood years, I have always had an aversion to consuming anything that's luminous.
Yeah, funny that.
Well, you say that, but lots of kids' stuff was always like, it will be like a luminous bloody color, and I'm like, no, you shouldn't eat that. That's clearly radioactive or bad. Yeah. You know, like Mountain Dew. I'm like, no, look at it. That is not something you should consume.
Yeah, I think that you know, there is a reason why, you know, in all horror movies, the stuff that they produce is usually bright green.
Yeah, it's
clearly a warning sign, isn't it? That,
it's clearly bad. But anyway, he agrees to well, he kind of half agrees, and then
doesn't really agree because
Herbert just chucks the needle in.
He's sort of like, you know, what are you doing? He's like, I'll show you, and then he injects it straight into the brain.
And he's like, don't expect too much. He's got a broken back.
Yeah.
Or broken neck. I can't remember what he said there.
Yeah, I think it's back.
But of course, it does come back to life. Horrible, painful, agonizing life.
Dan says, why is it making that noise? And Herbert's response is, it's birth. Birth is always painful.
He's like, yeah, bollocks.
And you, as I'm watching, you just go, no, it's because look at the fucking thing. It's almost in half.
It's just a mangled thing at this point. Yeah, it's like the end of The Fly. If one of them was like, why is he making such weird noises?
Yeah, why is he dragging that machinery
agony?
Why is he making that noise? I'm sure he's in a great deal of pain, but God, blimey.
Yeah, he could at least be quiet about it. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of enough for Dan. He's like, okay, well, I can't deny what my eyes have seen. You know, he kind of has done what he said he would do. Cat was clearly dead, and he brought it back to life. So, being an
idiot.
Yeah, pretty much. He's being an idiot. He's being like honest to the point of stupidity.
Yeah.
He goes to Dr. Hasley. And he's like, well, look, you know, I'm bearing in mind, it's way worse because Hasley is Barbara's father.
Yeah.
Like, it's doubly stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you say this anyway to the dean of your school? Why would you say it to the dean of your school, who is also the father of the woman you love?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay, Dan.
Yeah, I think, you know, maybe let this one slide.
Maybe just keep this one to yourself, mate, you know. So he tells Dr. Hasley, he's like, look, I've seen this with my own eyes. He has brought an animal back to life from death. And Hasley, of course, this is everything Hasley probably wanted to hear, needed to hear. He was like, look, you know, I knew this was going to be trouble. As soon as you had Herbert living in your residence, I knew this was going to be a thing. And he's like, you know, I think Dan says something like, oh, you know, it was Barbara's cat, and Barbara saw it. It's like, and he's like, you brought my daughter in on this. Like, my daughter was involved in this lunacy. And he's like, right, okay, fine. Well, for one thing, you can forget your grant.
Yep, your grant's revoked. And
Herbert can just continue his studies without education because he clearly doesn't need it. So he's gone. And I mean, like, it's really nasty because Hasley's like, well, Herbert's gone. You can stay if you can pay your own way, knowing full well that he cannot pay his own way. There's like no way. So, you know, Dan even says, like, I wouldn't be able to cover, you know, cover the fees. I'll have to give up my study. I can't, you know. So, you know, they're effectively both expelled through one means or another. Like, Herbert is outright expelled. Dan is
either way, they're fucked.
Basically fucked, yeah. But anyway, being barred from the school is certainly not going to stop Mr. West. Right. So we see Dan coming into the morgue with a corpse, and we get this great bit with the security guard. Where the security guard's like, you know, I'm going to go for a break and all that, and he's like, what have you? What is he? Well, I can't remember what he's.
he says, what have you got there? And he goes to look underneath it. And
yeah,
he says,
he's like some meatball.
He looks like a meatball. He got crushed by a truck, I think he says.
Yeah.
And he's like, ooh.
Even Herbert, when they get inside, is like, meatball? What? Yeah, so he manages to, he's like you said, the guard goes off for a wank or whatever, and
he's off for atomic tanks.
Yeah, and they head into the morgue, and Herbert takes.
I love that bit with the bit with so Herbert's like he's got his shoes and socks off, and he's got a toe tag on, and he basically grabs his socks and shoes and speedily puts them on, and Coombs wanted to do that scene, and they were like, no, you're never going to have enough time to do it.
No, I love it.
He says, no, I can put my shoes and socks on really quick. I want you to do it. And I love it. He puts the sock over the toe tag, so he's still got the toe tag on underneath his socks.
But it's so
great little detail.
It's so Herbert as well, because he's so well dressed. The whole way through, and I love the idea that he's doing something so kind of horrific, but he needs to be dressed. He's like, no, I'm putting my shoes on, I'm doing my laces up, I'm
gonna walk around with bare feet.
And it's made, I think that shot, although it is fast for someone putting on shoes and socks, I think it is made better for it going on a little long, because it is just like, no, he's gonna do this, like he's that's so Herbert. He's gonna be dressed, he's gonna everything proper.
And again, it's like it's very much like the cushion Frankenstein.
Yeah,
cushion Frankenstein is always fucking elegant.
Always.
He's almost always immaculately dressed while he's doing it. And as soon as he's done his duty, he cleans his hands and he puts his suit back on. And Herbert is pretty much just like that.
Yeah, I mean, Herbert doesn't get much chance to clean up towards the end of this movie, but while he can, he certainly does. But yes, so they are going to bring a corpse back to life is the plan, and they're looking through the different toe tags to see what they died of, how they died. They come across one and he's like, oh, there's your meatball, because it's just like whatever. Didn't he say he got hit by a truck or something? They're like, oh, there's your meatball. But finally he finds one and he's like,
there's that really cool burn victim that they keep coming across. It's like his arms sort of stuck. And that dude's an amputee, so later on when he gets his arm cut off, it's literally a fake arm that they had on this amputee guy.
They did like a thing bit where they were like, get an actual amputee for this shot or for a couple of shots. It's really effective.
Yeah,
it really is. So they find one, and Dan's like, oh, we're never going to find one, let's just leave. And Herbert's like, no, this one's almost perfect, this will do. And he's like, what do you mean almost perfect? He's like, well, his heart might have exploded, but other than that. But he's like, all we need is just the smallest response. Yeah. Like, we don't need him to be like completely conscious or alive. We just need some response, and we'll know we've got enough evidence to continue our work. We just need to prove the theory that this works on more than just cats. We just need to prove that it can work on humans.
And I would like to think, if I was in Dan's position, I would probably be a bit more forceful in can we not do this on this massive dude?
He's Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double.
Sorry?
He was Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double.
Yeah, Peter Kent. 14 movies, I think he doubled for him.
Yeah, I the same thought as you. I was like, not that one though, because I saw how the fucking cat reacted, and like,
huge.
That guy is
Apparently
massive.
He was doubling for Stallone, Schwarzenegger, on Terminator while he was doing this.
That's mental.
And apparently he brought Stallone to. I keep saying Stallone on the brain. That's because I saw that advert earlier on.
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger to the set apparently at one point. There was like with like a bunch of really big dudes.
Right.
And apparently they got into the lift, like they crammed into the lift these like massive dudes. And then they noticed that there was a secretary behind them, squished against the wall. And apparently Schwarzenegger turned around and went, "Let's get naked."
Oh, God.
How terrifying must
That's
that
awful.
woman have been? I mean, it's funny, but it's also...
It's funny terrifying. For them. I mean...
Yeah.
Jesus. Oh, the 80s.
Yeah.
So anyway, they start reviving the corpse. Meanwhile, Dr. Hasley has a sneaking suspicion that Dan might be hanging around still.
Yeah.
And he's come down to the morgue. Now, Barbara has followed him on the assumption that he's coming down to try and catch Dan doing something. So Barbara also obviously suspects that Dan is also doing something.
Yeah.
And they meet the receptionist there, or the nurse.
The other doctor.
And he's like, has Mr. West and Dan been down here? And she's like, yeah, they're in the morgue. He's like, I gave specific instructions with this doctor not to let him in, not to let him in this place. He's banned. And she's like, he's been in surgery like all day or something. He's like been dealing with some other thing. I haven't seen him. Like, I don't know. Just doing my job. So, of course, he's like, right, I'm going to go deal with this myself then, and he kind of storms off.
He says to the doctor, you keep your eye on her and make sure she doesn't go anywhere. It's like, Jesus Christ, what is she, 10?
Yeah, I know. She is an adult, right, at this stage.
Yeah.
But of course, again, she's starting to rebel. She's having a go at him and saying, like, I'm going to follow you. I'm not going to, I'm not listening to you. I love Dan. Will you not listen to me? I love him. And so I think it's like the case of like, she's always done what he said and now she's starting to rebel.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he's like, make sure she stays here. Like, she will not leave. Like, I am the father. She is the daughter. She will do as I say, And obviously hearing that she's in love with Dan just incenses him even more.
He's happy.
Because you get the impression he never liked Dan anyway. And he doubly hates West.
I think it's probably one of those snobby, he's working class.
He's not good enough. Yeah. He's not good enough for my girl. So they succeed. Well, they don't actually. Sorry, they fail.
You go back to West and Dan.
And they fail. He injects him.
It's not working.
And it don't work.
And one of the funniest things I love about it, they keep saying, like, oh, we need 10 cc's of this or 20 cc's. Mm-hmm. And the amount in the syringe is way more than
yeah. It's like a pint by the end of it. So
like, it obviously wasn't enough, we need to put a bit more in. So he just loads up with another massive syringe.
It's like a syringe full. And the syringes aren't normal size. It's like a huge syringe.
They're huge needles.
It's like comedy syringe. Yeah.
Like horse needle.
Yeah, kind of. It's like an animal, elephant needle. So he's like, oh, well, we just need more. And he gets more out and injects more. But it still doesn't seem to work. And then, of course, they're like, okay, we just need to get out of here. It's not working. And he's like, well, help me cover him up. Help me, cover up. I don't hear Dr. Hasley coming, and they're like, oh, quick, cover him up. But at that point, you see the hand starts moving. The arm starts twitching. And of course, the corpse is, as the title of the film would suggest, reanimated.
Yeah. It's screaming.
Yes, screaming and going crazy. As they will establish later, the theory at this stage is that, well, he was dead too long, so it's just pure animal instinct.
Yeah.
Because Herbert loves it. Herbert is impressed that he calls the name of the corpse and it looks at him.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my God, he recognized it. But Dan says later, he's like, no, he just recognized, he heard a noise and looked at noise. That's not recognizing his name or understanding you in any way. He was just reacting and wanting to murder you and everyone in the room. But Hazley is like trying to come in.
He's trying to get into the actual the sort of
the room.
I guess that's the freezer section, isn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously the door is locked, and he's pulling on the door and screaming at them to come out and let come out and face the music.
Face the music, yeah.
And the big dude just takes the door out.
Yeah. He just rips the door off the hinges.
Into poor Dean Halsey.
Yeah.
Who's crushed underneath, and apparently that really hurt.
I'm not surprised.
Actually him. He said it really hurt his back.
Oh God.
But one of what's what's his name? Robert Sampson, who plays the Dean. In this whole section, the expressions on his face are amazing.
I would say even for the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
I
the
think
shock
he's really
and
good.
pain on his face is amazing. And of course, the corpse picks him up by the throat and smashes him against the wall, and then bites off 2 of his fingers.
It's really gory. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so gory. I can't remember who it was said, but one of the guys said, on normal horror movies, I usually use like 2 gallons of fake blood. On this, it was like 40 gallons of blood or something.
I'm not surprised. There's so much blood in this movie. It's amazing. And it's really red blood as well.
Really.
It's super red. Yeah, so he's dead.
He's thrown against a wall and does not get back up.
No, there's like blood on the wall and stuff, and from behind his head. He's not well at all. And West gets the bone saw.
He's got hold of. Has he got the hold of Dan now? Is it, or is he still?
Oh yeah, he throws Dan against the wall. Dan also gets blood on the wall, which is not a good thing. But they
Dan
move
hits
past it.
head about.
He does.
This movie.
He's not well by the end of this. But I love West is like, he's just really calm, and he's got the bone saw, and he's like, Dan, I'll deal with this. And immediately
he says Dan. He says because that's right. The corpse is holding the Dean still.
Yeah,
and Dan's behind trying to get him off.
Yeah,
and he West breaks this cabinet to get the bone saw out, and it's the way he says Dan.
Yeah,
and he says, "Watch out."
Yeah, and the thing I love is like I thought when I first saw that scene, I was like, oh, he's just going to use the bone saw to like sever his spinal cord.
Yeah, or his brain.
Or his brain.
In his head.
But no, he uses it to just basically obliterate his heart from behind.
He goes through his back.
Through his entire chest.
Into it, yeah. And it's like, wow, okay.
All right, that's one way, I suppose.
I'm sure it would have been easier just to sort of go into his brain, but fine,
Yeah, I think West enjoys his work a little too much.
I think so.
Anyway,
we did forget the one little scene of complete madness in West when they're chasing the cat after they've killed it. West is on the floor, and Dan comes over to him, and West goes, "Dan, behind you!" And he looks behind him, and of course nothing's there, and he just giggles.
Yeah, he just bursts out laughing. Yeah,
because just completely sort of starts giggling and then slowly slides down the wall. It's like, whoa, he really is fucking nuts, isn't he?
Yeah. So I love West is totally unfazed by everything that's just happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like completely. Like Dad is like, what?
He's horrified.
We done?
Is completely horrified.
Yeah. We've taken one dead body, brought it back to life, and it's killed the father of the woman I love.
And West is like, no, this is the perfect opportunity.
He's like, now we've got a fresh specimen.
This dude has just died.
Yeah.
It's like minutes away.
Again, though, yes, he just died. But he died having his fucking head smashed into a wall. Like, what quality of brain are you expecting here? It's like, yeah, he did just die, but I feel like, reason of death is very important in your work, Herbert. But anyway, he does. Of course he does. He injects Hazley with the reagent. It basically does return him to life, but he's effectively kind of a zombie. But he does recognize his daughter.
Yeah,
he's some recognition there. So he is right. Herbert is right that if you do it soon enough, they do retain something.
Because also he clearly hates Dan, and he hates West as well. But Dan, he immediately goes for Dan.
But he just generally hates him. Yeah.
And meanwhile, you've got Megan, who she slipped her babysitter, and she's come down into the down the lift into sort of towards the morgue, and obviously the corridor is empty and you can hear sort of crashes and things, and she's slowly. There's a great shot where she comes. It's sort of like really close on her.
Mm.
Then the camera pulls back along the corridor, and it's just this really beautiful shot of her, in the distance as coming down the corridor.
Yeah.
Really, so beautiful. And to think, this is all. Almost everybody on this movie. They're all, all the effects team. They were all students. They were kind of brought in for no money. Because obviously, Charles Band notoriously never had any fucking money, and they said, well, can we do this? He's like, well, no, we haven't got any more money for more effects, but I do have somebody who's on another movie doing effects that can come over. So they were all sort of, all the other sort of actors and crew were mostly sort of people, like the accountant and all that. And it
adds to the campness, though.
Yeah, it does.
The kind of slightly ropey acting really works in films like this, I think.
Yeah. And Gordon's first, directing, and it's beautiful. It's really well done. I mean, obviously they used, what's his name, the cinematographer, who was again, they literally, what's his face said, I'm going to send him over, and he's basically going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it looks so good, is because he was already, already a really great cinematographer. So Mac Alberg is that dude in apparently when he was making The Greatest Story Ever Told, David Bowie came up to him, who's working with him, and he said he found out that he worked on Re-Animator, and he ran up to him and he said, is it true that you worked on Re-Animator? And he said yes, and he said, that's my favorite movie. Oh. So apparently this was David Bowie's favorite movie.
I just love the idea of someone of Bowie's stature just fanboying.
Yeah.
It's just really cute.
It is.
Because you always see, I mean, obviously he was just a guy, but you kind of like, he's kind of like, deified, right? Where everyone's like, oh my God, it's Bowie. And like the thought of him actually fanboying over someone, just be like, oh my God, you worked on Re-Animator. It's my favorite film. Yeah. That's great. I love it.
Like I said, it's such a beautifully done. There's some genuinely beautiful shots and lighting in this movie. For what is essentially a really, it's I think $1 million it was made for, basically.
Mm-hmm. So
just under.
So Barbara, Megan, keep calling her Barbara. Barbara is the actress. Barbara Crampton.
Yes.
Yeah.
Barbara Crampton.
So she arrives and she's like, well, what the fuck has happened? Because her dad's a complete state in this stage. Yeah. There's also a corpse on the floor with like a bone saw through it, and like there's blood everywhere.
He's completely drooling blood out of his mouth, and he's got blood all over him, and he's got both of those two by the throat.
Yeah.
And of course she screams, Daddy, and he sort of immediately recognizes her and stops. Basically runs into a corner. He runs into a corner
and covers his face and hides his face. He's horrified at what he's become, and he doesn't want his daughter to see that. And of course, Herbert immediately goes into like, I'm going to talk my way out of this. I'm going to talk my way. He's like, hey, look, he came at us. He just went mad. I know he was fine when you saw him. He went crazy. I don't know. And Dan kind of, tries to back him up a bit, and it's a weak excuse. But then it is such a crazy scenario anyway. You're like, well, who knows? But
the security guard comes back as well.
He does.
What the fuck's going on?
Yeah, well, you should have been at your post, sir. But yeah, so it's effectively, I guess, accepted that he went mental.
Yeah.
Just lost his mind. And somehow lost some fingers.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Maybe bit his own fingers
I was going to say,
I don't know. And he also, they also blame Hasley for the other corpse that's been drilled. He's like, hey, he just did that as well. Like, why not? He was really angry, so he took it out on that corpse, and then he started trying to choke us. And of course, she did legitimately see him choking the two of them, so there's that. But yeah. Anyway, now that that Hasley's this kind of weird zombie thing, Hill basically takes over. He's like he's given guardianship over Hasley, and he's put him in he's basically put him in a padded cell next to his own office.
Just adjoining his office. It's like, how the fuck does that work?
Why did you have that there?
Yeah.
That's a really sinister thing to have right next to your office, sir. But anyway, he does. So now he's in there, and he promises Megan, he's like, I'll take care of him, don't worry.
Yeah. And he's basically, I want you to sign this paperwork.
Just sign him over to me. It'll be all right.
Exploratory surgery on him. You think, no, I don't want you to bloody do surgery on my father. Thank you very much. But she agrees.
Yeah, and the whole time he's looking through the window, just like horrified and just like, oh, why am I? And
the actor again Robert Sampson, who's playing the dean, he wanted to throw himself around a bit more, but apparently, and you can see it when they're moving around, those walls basically were so flimsy that have fallen down.
God.
So
just destroy the set.
He's got to be really careful where he throws himself so that he's not knocking the walls down.
So Hill, is obviously knows what's going on. He knows that Herbert's done it.
Yeah.
And
and this is where we get another the more evidence of the mind control, because he, as I said earlier on, he's sort of backing her into the against the mirror, and he's saying to her, I'm gonna keep an eye on you now, and we're gonna all this stuff up, and she's sort of
gonna creep all over you now,
and basically you get this sort of impression that he is sort of doing something mind controlly on her, and then the father headbutts the mirror.
Starts headbutting the mirror. Yeah, he saves her.
Yeah, he kind of saves her.
Not for the last time. So anyway, Hill basically heads off to well, sometime later, Hill heads off to confront West in his basement, and basically is like, hey, you know what? You're going to hand everything over to me, and I'm going to take credit. I'm going to be the one that invented this. And West is like, nah, I don't think so. This shovel says otherwise.
Yeah. And like I said, and again, you get that whole, he's talking to West, and West is backing off.
Yes.
He looks like he's, mind voodoo on him.
Now, I always assumed he was going to do a Friday the 13th at this shot. I always expect the shovel to decapitate him.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously it doesn't. It hits him in the face, and then he decapitates him on the floor.
Yeah.
With a couple of... Yeah.
And again, it's going to hit him in the head. Like, no, don't hit him in the head.
I know, again, it's like, dude, what do you want to do? If you want to bring these things back to life, maybe don't.
Yeah.
But
of course, this is sort of cut up with Megan going home and Dan being in the house, waiting for her, like some weird stalker.
Yeah.
And she's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, I had to sort of see you, and I had to make sure you were okay. And he's just sort of doing his best to sort of, bring her around. And she really doesn't want any of it. But again, she slowly comes round to it, and she listens to him because she clearly loves him.
Yeah, it must be love, because if you had any sanity, you'd be like, I don't know what the situation is, but whatever it is, I never want to see you again. Just get out of my life, all of you, forever.
Meanwhile, Herbert's there sort of with
the head.
I've never reanimated actual parts.
Doesn't he say that? He's like, oh, parts. Yeah. Yes, parts.
Yeah, parts. And so he injects the head and the body.
See, now I was all for the head.
You'd go, yeah, the head.
The head was
not
fine.
The body.
I would have stopped with the head.
Yeah.
And
then it sort of cuts back to the other two.
Now
they do a thing. And then when you cut back to West, I love it. He's there bored, like looking bored, and he's just tapping the head with a pencil,
Yeah.
waiting for him. Occasionally checking his watch, waiting for him to come back. And eventually, his eyes open.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's basically, his first words are, "West, you bastard."
Well, of course, that gets West's attention. He's like, West, and he's like, yes, you're talking, like you're actually talking.
Yeah,
and he starts making notes, and but of course he's like, you bastard. And you see the headless corpse kind of coming up behind him. And knocks him out. Obviously the body then steals the reagent, and they go back to Hill's office.
Yeah. We also forgot to say when before he reanimates. I love it that he got the note spike. He puts the head on the note spike. To keep it upright. Which is a great little thing.
It is fantastic. So
Megan and Dan basically come in.
Yeah, we should say this wasn't it before this that Dan found the papers and the bits of hair and shit?
Yes, of course. Yeah, they go in. That's it.
But he said he doesn't tell her, which always is like he finds it. He doesn't mention it to her at all, and it's like, dude, that's kind of important.
Why wouldn't you sort of say, hey, this dude's got all this?
Because he tells Herbert later, but it's like, why didn't you tell her? Like, I definitely would have told her.
Pictures of you and articles about you and a piece of your hair. That's fucking weird.
Yeah. No one should have anyone's hair. That's definitely gone. That's definitely gone too far.
Well,
it's gone wrong.
Your girlfriend gives it to you, as a keepsake. That's fine.
Yes. That is fine. It's a bit weird.
Or usually, parents keep locks of hair when they're.
That's different. That is different.
My mum, I think, has got locks of me and my brother and sister's hair.
When you're old enough to be someone's granddad,
yes,
and you've stolen this schoolgirl's hair, you're not related in any way, and you've stolen this girl's hair. That is definitely
creepy.
Definitely creepy. It's weird. Like it's like I do find it funny. Like he doesn't have like any kind of shrine to her though. It's just in a folder.
Yeah,
it's just just a folder.
Also, that drawer has a couple of.
Yeah, I know. And
it's they all look sort of as big and beefy as that one. You think,
is he like creeping after all the students at the school? Like, is he a proper predator?
He's looking at the other ones as well.
Yeah. But anyway, I guess Hill was a lot nicer to West than West was to Hill. Although you assume he still doesn't. Yeah, he knocks him out, but he doesn't like behead him or anything.
No.
Or but I guess he's like, well, maybe I'll need to know how to make this reagent, and I might not be able to do it all. So I probably need Hill alive. I need West alive.
That's a possibility.
Although he doesn't tie him up or anything either. I guess it's difficult to do when you're just a disembodied head and
he hasn't quite got used to the controlling his own body yet.
He manages to take the reagent anyway, and whatnot. But yeah, so he starts doing the mind control thing.
Well, I love it. He sneaks into the morgue, and I like that he's got the teaching tool head on his body, and
that's amazing, that shot, because that guard just is the worst guard ever.
Yeah,
he's walking. Even the corpse is wearing this fucking thing, and he's walking in the most like clearly dodgy way possible. He's like side shifting across the room.
Looking at his porno mag, and he just sort of slightly glances up, and goes, "Hey, is that you, Dr. Hill?" I was like, "Yes." It's like, oh, okay. And then this guy looking at his magazine. And he goes in, and it's all like really easy done, perfect. I mean, not easy done if you're, still got work to do, but they're all like really cool little sort of head on the table and head on the gurney and all that sort of stuff, and head in the chest being carried and all that sort of.
We should say he sent Hasley to kidnap Megan.
Yes.
Before he went to the morgue.
Oh yeah, that's that really cool shot
Because
where
that's where he does do the start the mind control proper, right?
yeah, he's talking to him through the two-way mirror, the one-way mirror,
Mm.
and then the light changes, and you can see him through the glass.
Yeah.
And like you got the reflection of the dean and stuff. It's really great.
It's awesome.
A really like simple but effective shot.
And you're right. It's the actor Hasley playing Hasley. His facial expressions are so good.
Yeah, David Gale was
David Gale. Yes,
amazing.
he's
Such
fantastic.
a great
But anyway, Megan is kidnapped by Hasley, who knocks out Dan again.
Yeah.
Poor Dan. But West wakes up, and of course he comes up and finds Dan, and Dan explains that, like, hey, Hasley just attacked me and kidnapped Megan, and also it turns out that Mr. Hill, Dr. Hill, is kind of creep. He's creeping after Megan, though I didn't mention that to her at all for no reason whatsoever. I kept that from her, but I'm telling you.
We did actually forget one with Dan as well, actually. At the end of the scene where they've reanimated the dean and stuff, he collapses.
Yes.
He goes into shock.
He does.
And collapses.
He kind of West, into the fetal position on the floor.
Yeah, and West sort of covers him over. He says, okay, you just got into shock. It's like, whoa, what?
But why aren't you in shock?
Yeah, exactly.
He's just like totally cool about it. Doesn't care. Yeah.
Dr. Hill is there. He's in his little tray covered in blood.
Yeah.
And
I like when the body adds more blood to the tray.
Yeah, adds more blood to it. And I do love that. There's also that funny bit where, because when he sneaks into the office, he's carrying the head in a duffel bag. Yeah. And when he opens it, he takes a deep gulping breath. It's like, where's that breath going?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, were you really suffocating in the back?
Maybe it's like a natural reaction that he still has, where his brain thinks, even though there's no need. Like in Highlander, when they're underwater and he's like drowning. He's like, what are you doing?
You can't die. You
can't drown. You're immortal. What are you doing?
Yeah. And so he's got his body injecting all of the other, corpses that are in the morgue.
Yeah.
Basically, clearly setting up a trap.
Yes, which he will very soon set off. Obviously anticipating that West or Dan or someone would probably show up to stop, or possibly the security guard might do his job today, finally.
He's gone for another wank.
Yeah. But yes, Hasley turns up with Megan.
Yep.
And they put her onto the slab, basically, don't they? It's one of the slabs.
Next to the head.
Next to the head, and the whole time he's being so creepy. He's like practically licking his lips and just like being really gross. And I don't think it's Hasley then. It's actually the headless body then picks her up, puts her on the slab, and strips her, ties her to puts the restraints on and all of that. And the whole time this headless this bodiless head is just like fucking salivating. It's proper gross. But yeah, anyway, then I forget if we cut back to West. I don't think we do, or somewhat out of sequence. They follow Hadley anyway, don't they? Which is how they find where he is. The headless body starts molesting her, right? She wakes up, she's screaming because she sees this head just on a table.
And he says he says along the lines of, I've always admired you, but now I realise that I have always loved you.
Yeah.
And he's, sucking her breast and, licking her and and he's literally about to go, as the joke is, the head giving head.
I mean, that's the entire joke, yes.
That is the entire joke.
And it is a funny joke.
It's funny. Barbara Crampton has been, she's been approached many, many times that they've said, are you sure you should have done that? And she's like, no. It was required for the job, and doing nude scenes has never, affected my career. As long as it's within the realm of it. If the film needs it, I'll do it, and I don't care.
If it was done in any kind of serious way,
yeah,
I would feel differently about it. It's so silly, and it's clearly a punchline. It's clearly a joke. And I was thinking while I was rewatching this, because I know we briefly talked about this scene off air when we were like, when you suggested we covered it. It was like, okay, because we were like, okay, we both feel the same way about the scene. It's funny.
Yes.
And I was rewatching it, and I was like, do you know what? Like, if it was a guy instead of her, I would still find this hilarious. It's a really funny scene. Like, the punchline is funny.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And yeah, I guess you obviously could trigger or be offensive to people. But for me personally, it's just very silly, and I find it very funny.
Yeah.
And I love. This is my favorite shot of Herbert West when he stood there and he starts giving him this shit, because he's about to go down on her, and he's just like, I'm so disappointed in you, and he just starts off on this tirade. I'm like, oh, that's so good.
And he
good.
He says, I'm seeing what you have done with my reagent. He says, listen, here you are, a tryst with a bubble-headed co-ed. You think, oh, poor Megan.
I know he can talk down on people funny. So good.
Brilliant.
Well, it's a distraction anyway. It's not necessarily, he doesn't necessarily mean any of it. I mean, he does, but
Yeah, of course, he clearly doesn't give a fuck about Megan.
No.
Have you heard the thing about David Gale in that scene?
No.
So he had a new wife, and at the premiere, when that scene came up, she got up and screamed, "Oh, how could you?" And she left, and she didn't come back.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it is believable. It's weird that they didn't have that conversation.
No.
I feel like I would have been like, this is the role, and this is the scene, just so you know, before we go in.
She was so horrified she never went back to him.
Wow. That would have been an awkward premiere.
Yeah.
Imagine after that, just like if you were sat next to them, like, hi. You're right, buddy.
Yeah.
But anyway, he is clearly distracting him, and it works. He kind of turns to face him, and the bodiless, the body picks up the head, and they're talking, and in the background you can see Dan sneaking in, and he's waking Megan, and he puts his shirt on her, and they're taking her out, and Herbert's like, I have a plan. And Hill's like, so do I.
So do I.
And all of the corpses, obviously, as we kind of guessed was going to happen, all come to life. And this goes back to that mind control thing. It's like, well, it makes more sense now that you've said that.
He says, because he's also done the laser.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, he was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, he does the laser lobotomy on them, and he says that it's his new technique. For laser lobotomy means that people are more susceptible, and he can control them like that.
Yeah.
But clearly, there's more to it than that.
Yes.
He's clearly controlling these, because at one point when they hurt the head, all of the others scream.
Yeah. Well, it kills the rest of them, right? It pretty much knackers a lot of them, I think.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah, they just basically then go off on a rampage, don't they?
Yeah, they're kind of mindless at that point. Yeah. But anyway, they start attacking. They are attacking Dan and Megan. They're kind of trying to escape. We get West is held down, and he's going to do the lobotomy on West as well, right? The laser scalpel lobotomy. But then Hasley, he's gets pleaded to by Megan, and again, he really sells it. It comes. He realizes, and he sees her, and he realizes the situation, and he starts attacking the other zombies, and he basically saves the day effectively. Causes absolute chaos. Of course, West manages to escape lobotomy. he just basically, Hasley, like you said, he grabs Hill's head and just starts squeezing it.
Yeah, and all the others, they all scream.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, the West sort of, I've got an idea, and he pulls out those two like already filled syringes.
Yeah,
and just stabs them.
Overdose.
In the back. Overdose. Just squeeze, and then also he snaps the needles off as well, which is like full injections, then snaps the needles off and like gives back. But of course, it doesn't do quite what he was expecting.
Well, he is kind of he in true Frankenstein fashion. He basically screws himself here. Like, he is his own downfall here. So
Hill's body mutates.
It does, and he ends up getting like strangled by his intestines. His intestines kind of
basically
come to life.
His chest breaks open and his guts come out and wrap around West.
Yeah,
and start pulling him towards.
Now, as West is getting pulled away, he's like, my notes, and he grabs all of his work and throws it at Dan. Who's like by the exit, and I love like even in his final moments, he's like, no, my notes are more important than anything. He's like, my notes, not my life, my notes. Take my notes. Which probably separates him slightly from Hammer's Frankenstein, because Hammer's Frankenstein would have been like, it's my brain that's important, not the notes. I'm the genius. You can't possibly do this without
here,
me.
I don't give a fuck. You know.
Whereas West, I guess, is like, no, even if I die, my work must continue.
Yeah. And Frankenstein is kind of like that, but
he kind of is.
It's all for him.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't think Frankenstein would trust anyone, let alone Dan.
No, that's true.
To carry on his work.
Although I don't know when you get to the point where later on in the later movies where he's he trusts that dude with his body, because he basically resurrects him, doesn't he?
Yes.
And he's got the new body, so he sort of does trust.
I think that was I always felt like that was more that they wrote themselves into a fucking hole and had to write themselves back out again.
Yeah, there is that.
But yes, he does that. But anyway,
so Halsey is basically it's such a great shot. He crushes Hill's head, this big fountain of gore, and then he throws it against the wall where it splats.
Doesn't it?
Sort of hits the deck.
Isn't that what opens the door? The security guard sees it and is like, what the fuck? Because then the headless body comes out as well, and he's like, what is going on?
Yeah. He's like, fuck. And basically, he's literally like, fuck this shit, I'm out.
He has a realistic reaction where he's just like, what the fuck? And then he realizes it's real, and he's like, yeah, I'm a bye.
Yeah, I'm gone.
See you later. But Megan and Dan are managed to escape as Halsey basically sacrifices himself. He gets ripped apart by the other corpses, who are now going crazy without the head controlling them. They've just turned into mindless zombies, I guess.
There's a corpse that knocks over acid. There's one that starts hitting the breakers and is like pulling all the wiring out.
Yeah.
So fire starts happening.
They're going full on Bride. They're just going full on Bride and just destroy everything. But they manage to escape.
They get to the lift, don't they? And one of the corpses is attacking them, and Dan gets knocked out, or not knocked out, or knocked down, or he's incapacitated. She gets strangled. Get him off, and they get to the lift, and then the burn victim grabs Megan by the throat, and he's strangling her, and Dan goes and gets the fire axe, cuts the arm off. But of course, it's too late for Megan.
Yeah, she's dead. If only you had some kind of reanimating reagent at your disposal.
Well, he takes her to the the emergency, I guess it's emergency room.
He does.
And they try and sort of resuscitate her, but of course,
Meanwhile, West kind of disappears into the acidy smoked room, and he might be dead or he might be back. You never know. And so they try everything they can to save poor Megan, Barbara. But they, modern science has only come so far. But of course, Dan's going to reach for the bag.
Yep.
There's still some reagent in there, and
this is such a great way to end it.
it's fantastic. The whole thing fades to black, and then you get the scream.
You get him putting the needle into her neck, and then it all goes black except for the reagent. It's just glowing there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the reagent plunge and disappear, and everything goes completely black. And then you get Barbara Crampton's fucking amazing scream.
It's awesome. Yeah.
She's such a great screamer.
Absolutely.
And that's it.
That is Re-Animator. And not only do I recommend Re-Animator, I do recommend Bride of Re-Animator as well.
Yes.
I think it's a great sequel.
I mean, there is a number of questions that you have to ask yourself about number 2. Like
I said, I think number 2 leans so much heavier into comedy even more than this one does.
Yeah, it does.
That it's I kind of give it a pass where it's like, okay, it's just, it's kind of Evil Dead 2-y.
But there is things like, okay, West probably didn't survive that.
No.
And Dr. Hill's head certainly didn't, but he does. I mean, one of my favourite things about the second one is
Gale's single now. He's got nothing better to do. So fuck it. All right then.
Dr. Hill gets. I mean, we're kind of spoiling the movie, but Dr. Hill basically gets someone to graft bat wings onto his head so that he can fly around.
It's brilliant. It is brilliant.
Fucking mental is that? It's brilliant.
It works. It works because of the tone of the film.
Yeah.
It totally works.
And like I said, it's such a fucking great movie, and it's so well made by pretty much a group of mostly first timers and students, with the professional cinematographer and profession effects teachers that had brought their students in, and it's just so well made, so great, and everybody is you can tell everybody loves this movie. They are all doing their utmost to make this a great movie.
Absolutely.
And they still enjoy it now. They're all so proud of this movie. When if you watch the I'm gonna forget the voiceover, the fuck. What do they call it? You said it earlier on. I still can't find it.
The what?
Where they're talking. The crew were talking over the movie.
Mystery Science.
The commentary. Fuck.
Oh, commentary. Sorry, I was like, what are you talking about?
My brain cannot find the word commentary for some reason.
That's all right. It's been a long week.
If you listen to the commentary, they've got genuine love for this movie. They are so proud of the work they did on this movie,
and they should be. It's a really good movie. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's brilliantly fun, brilliantly gory.
Mm.
And also, the sort of the triple threat of Crampton, Coombs, and Gordon. You also then a couple of years later you get the Beyond.
Yeah, I love the Beyond as well.
Lovecraft one, which is great fucking movie.
Yeah, I agree.
And then a bit later on you get Castle Freak.
I like Castle Freak as well.
They're really good.
For what they are, they're fine. I should say this obviously we're not sponsored by anyone, because why would anyone sponsor us? However, my friend has worked on did the artwork for the upcoming memoir of Stuart Gordon, which you can you can get at fabpress.com. It's available for pre-order, I think. Now it went for pre-order at the end of March. It might be out now, not sure, but he did the it's the Naked Theatre in Uncensored Horror memoir by Stuart Gordon. My friend did all of the cover art and stuff for it, and it's awesome looking. Certainly one that I'm actually kind of interested in picking up, because I think it would be a really good read. But I absolutely love Re-Animator. At some point, I feel like we will probably cover Bride.
Yeah,
we'll probably come back round to it, in the fullness of time, where we got the rest of our lives to continue this podcast. Eventually we'll come back round. You never know.
Yeah.
But yes, is there anything else you wanted to add on Re-Animator?
No, I just think, it's
just a good fun, isn't it?
If you love, gory, slightly silly horror movies, it's kind of in the vein of Evil Dead. It's has a similar sort of humor to dark humor to that. If you like that sort of movie, then this is just will be right up your alley. And I understand it's clearly not for everyone, but any horror fan should at least give this a chance because it is brilliant.
Yeah, it's schlocky, funny, and very gory.
Yeah,
lots of mac and cheese. Lots of mac and cheese.
There's plenty of schlocky, gory movies out there that are terrible, but this is brilliantly done.
How much mac and cheese was eaten in the making of this film? It's always the gore noise is always like mac and cheese. Someone's just eat mac and cheese into the microphone. But yeah, absolutely recommend this one. Anyway, we'll be back next week doing our usual review thing. Find some stuff to watch. But until then, stay safe, take care, and we will catch you next time.